Welcome back. While playing the Arkham series, you come across countless unique and interesting characters, all with their own unique backstories, but fewer as impactful on the franchise as a whole than that of Quincy Sharp, former Warden of Arkham Asylum turned wannabe spirit conduit, turned, well, I won't spoil much because that's why we're here today, because today we'll be going through the unknown story of one of the men who we can point at as being the catalyst for the events of the games, right from Arkham Asylum all the way through to Batman Arkham Knight. As with all lore videos though, the footage on screen often won't match what I'm saying due to a large majority of this stuff not being seen in the games, so I'll try and use some entertaining background footage for you and match it up as best I can. And without further ado, sit back, grab yourself a drink, leave a like and subscribe if you learned something, and let's get into the story of Warden Quincy Sharp. Before the night of Batman Arkham Origins, Quincy Sharp was already circling Gotham's political stage, though exactly what he was doing there is left vague. He wasn't yet the mayor as we know, more of a background figure, and fast forward to the events of Arkham Origins, Sharp's path to infamy truly began. He was approached by Lady Shiva, who claimed to represent a mysterious and powerful benefactor. Her offer was a pretty simple one, to help create a new asylum for Gotham's criminally insane, and his political career would soar by doing so. Sharp, ever the opportunist, accepted without hesitation, and at this point he was little more than a political activist with delusions of grandeur, but the idea of running Arkham gave him a platform, and like a true political grifter, he began campaigning immediately. In the aftermath of the Christmas Eve events, Sharp appeared in an interview with Jack Ryder. He used the chaos as ammunition and blamed Blackgate for its inability to contain Gotham's worst, and calling for mentally ill inmates to be transferred somewhere they could be quote-unquote properly treated. His solution was to simply reopen Arkham Asylum, restore it to its former glory, and present himself as the man who could fix Gotham's problems. I'll let that conversation play out now, because it's one I'm not sure many of you might have heard, as it takes place very deep into Arkham Origins credits.
Our next guest, political strategist Dean Snyder, has been following tonight's events since the start, more than 8 hours ago. Dr. Snyder, let's start with you. What's your view?
Well, Jack, it's a travesty. The ultimate failing of the justice system. A vigilante cleaning up our streets after countless deaths and bombings? What has happened to our police force? What about James Gordon? He didn't exactly prove himself tonight.
Hold on a minute, Dean. Now, I'm no defender of the GCPD or Captain Gordon for that matter. Like you said, tonight's debacle is some reflection of his efficacy, but I can't see any police force in any municipality doing a substantially better job against criminals like this Joker character or any of the hired killers he's brought into town. I mean, these guys are a different breed. We've never seen anything like this. So for me, it's less a reflection on Gotham's cops and more of a reflection on the state of our country. A country where our mental health and education systems are so warped and broken that we produce criminals of this nature.
You raise an interesting point, Hank, but what I'm wondering is what we'll do next.
No, it's not an interesting point. It's just plain wrong. They're both wrong. This isn't about the police or the Batman. It isn't about the state of our nation somehow churning out a dangerous new batch of the criminally deranged. It's about the failing of one single institution. An institution which, in my view, represents the biggest threat to Gotham and its citizens. A time bomb, just waiting to go off. If tonight's events have taught us anything, it's that Blackgate is not the place to be housing our city's most dangerous offenders. Not one, but two prison breaks in the same night. All of tonight's tragedies would have been avoided if Gotham had a proper treatment facility for its top echelon offenders. A place with impenetrable security, where the most dangerous could be isolated, rehabilitated, and treated for their illness. A place like Arkham Asylum. And after what happened tonight, I promise the good people of Gotham that I will work tirelessly. I will lobby the city council, go to the governor if I have to, do everything in my power to get Arkham Asylum reopened, so we can all sleep a little easier.
There you have it. Quincy Sharp placing the blame for tonight's events not on the Batman, not on the Joker, but on Blackgate Prison, and pledging to return Arkham Asylum to full operations. We'll be back with more from Mr. Sharp and our other guests when the Jack Ryder Hour continues after this message.
This narrative carried forward into the Cold Heart incident. After Mr. Freeze's attack on Gothcorp, Sharp publicly doubled down, insisting that criminals like Freeze belonged in Arkham. Once again, he took a tragedy and spun it into his political capital, carefully crafting the image of Gotham's real saviour, while inching closer to his mayoral ambitions, and between Origins and Asylum, Sharp finally saw his vision through. Arkham was reopened under his leadership with a fresh team of doctors and security staff. Familiar names like Penelope Young, Aaron Cash, Hugo Strange, and even Thomas Elliott. With the stage set, the Asylum became the new home for Gotham's rogues gallery. Ivy, Scarecrow, Joker, Harley, Two-Face, Killer Moth, Killer Croc, Mad Hatter, and of course the Riddler were all placed in its hallowed halls, and in Sharp's mind this was progress. In reality, what he'd actually just done is gathered the worst Gotham had to offer and labelled it as a chance for reform in one of the most genuinely baffling moves of all time. During the events just before Arkham Asylum, after Batman once again dragged the Joker back into custody, the Dark Knight phoned ahead to Arkham. He told Warden Sharp that he'd be arriving in 15 minutes. Sharp, eager to look like he had some sort of control, barked at his security staff about their past failures with the Joker's escapes. He declared that Arkham's incompetence would end that day, and even went as far as saying, "We straighten out Arkham today, we straighten out Gotham tomorrow," which really starts to sound like old Quincy over here was going a bit insane. That's because he was. One guard couldn't help but note that Sharp sounded less like a warden and more like a man already rehearsing a campaign speech, which is pretty in character. But beneath that loud and confident exterior was a far darker truth. Because unknown to his staff, Sharp was as unstable as the very patients he wanted to keep in custody. He had actually been diagnosed with schizophrenia, a fact he buried out of shame, refusing treatment, and instead he leant deeper into his obsession with the asylum itself. When he took control of Arkham, he became fixated on the writings of its founder, Amadeus Arkham. Now, Amadeus deserves a lore dive of his own, and I will get around to that one day, but the more Sharp read about Amadeus, the more deluded he became, convincing himself that Amadeus' ghost was speaking directly to him. These hallucinations twisted his sense of purpose and pushed him into stalking and even murdering his own patients in secret. And if that wasn't enough, Dr. Hugo Strange was pulling the strings in the background. Strange had been lacing Sharp's tea with a concoction made from the Mad Hatter's mind control serum, which we talk about a bit more in depth in the Mad Hatter lore video, which you can find along with every other lore video down below. And this serum amplified his illness and reduced the Warden to nothing more than a puppet. To the outside world, Sharp looked like Gotham's next great reformer, but in reality he was spiralling into madness, one page of Amadeus' journal and one poisoned cup of Mad Hatter's special tea at a time. Now into the event of Batman Arkham Asylum. When Batman delivered Joker back to Arkham, Warden Sharp was waiting at the gates, flanked by his security detail. The guards wasted no time strapping Joker to a handcar, eager to push him down into intensive care. Sharp, never shy about his disgust for the clown, ordered his men to double-check security and personally warned Officer William North, the officer on duty in intensive treatment, that another escape would ruin his shot at political office. North swore that every guard was present and ready, but Sharp wasn't convinced. He stared North down and muttered, "I hope it's enough, Officer North, for your sake." Sharp claimed that Joker would change, insisting that Dr. Penelope Young was already working on a quote-unquote cure, whatever that means, but Joker made his move and within minutes the asylum was under siege and Harley Quinn took Sharp hostage. From the patient pacification chamber, she broadcast Sharp trussed up and gagged, a trophy for Joker's grand takeover. The chaos spread and Joker's men cut down guards in Arkham East, seized the mansion and the botanical gardens, and intercepted Dr. Young alongside Aaron Cash as they headed to the mansion. They planned to torture Young's location out of the guards while hauling Sharp deeper into captivity, but Batman managed to rescue Cash and Franklin. But Harley dragged Sharp off toward the mansion, Kane and all. In the mansion itself, Sharp's misfortune only grew worse. After Dr. Young triggered a bomb set by Joker's men in a desperate attempt to retrieve Sharp's security codes, Batman was left stunned in the wreckage. Harley, amused by the sight of Batman nearly dead, ripped the tape off Sharp's mouth only to smash him across the skull with his own cane. She then hauled him to the penitentiary where she forced him to read out humiliating announcements over Arkham's intercom, which are actually very funny, and one that always tickles me is this one.
This is the warden. It is vital that everyone unload their sidearms immediately. I recommend unloading them into... I can't read this. Unloading them into your head.
Batman eventually tracked Sharp's DNA trail to the security control room. Sharp sat horrified as the monitors showed Harley freeing Poison Ivy and Joker releasing Arkham's lunatics onto the island. Batman freed him and took his security code, instructing Sharp to stay put. Sharp obeyed and locked himself in, but not before leaving one last cryptic note which we can find later. Using a rusty nail in his own blood, he scrawled a message addressed to Batman, then slipped away. Clayface, trapped in his weirdly translucent cell, watched him wander off, probably more curious than concerned. Dr. Penelope Young actually made notes on Sharp, which are as follows. During my tenure here at Arkham, I often find myself wondering if it is just the patients who need help. What is it about this place that brings out the worst in people? Warden Sharp clearly overcompensates for a variety of insecurities, and is an excellent practitioner of avoidance and denial. He actually believes it is he who has made a difference here and not the doctors. The man is quite clearly a fool, and for the sake of the Asylum, I hope his mayoral campaign goes well. Additional note, sometimes I feel his full attention is not on the job at Arkham. I imagine this is due to his mayoral campaign, but the problem may run deeper. His constant interference and snooping into my work has been both annoying and patronising. These are interesting notes as they show that people who knew what they were looking for could actually tell something was off with Sharp, which goes to show how far gone he actually was. And when Batman finally pieced the puzzle together using the Spirit of Arkham tablets around the map, which I'll let play. No, I'm kidding, I'm not going to make you listen to all of that. But they basically show Sharp's descent into madness, and we discover that the so-called Spirit of Amadeus Arkham had actually been Sharp himself all along, confirming that he was completely batshit. To cap off Sharp's secretive nature, in the hidden chamber of the Warden's office behind a weak wall, Batman can find the blueprint of Sharp's ultimate play to contain Gotham's worst, walling off Gotham's slums and converting them into a new super prison, Arkham City. Between the events of Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, Quincy Sharp reinvented himself. After the riots, he re-emerged not as a failed, genuinely insane warden, but as a hero. He claimed full credit for stopping Joker's plot to destroy Gotham, presenting himself as the real hero who saved the city from chaos. The public bought it, and while riding that wave of false glory, Sharp coasted into the mayor's office with little resistance. And now with political power secured, Sharp wasted no time setting his long-brewing plan into motion. His vision for Gotham slums became a reality. Arkham City was built. Unlike Blackgate or the traditional Asylum, this wasn't a prison in the usual sense. It was a lawless district carved right into the heart of Gotham where criminals were free to roam, form gangs, and fight for dominance. The only rule was simple, no one leaves, and anyone who tried would be executed on sight. To enforce this, Tiger Security patrolled the massive walls and kept the chaos contained, well, at least that was the official story. Beneath the rhetoric of safety and reform, Sharp's true motives were actually far darker. His own murderous tendencies suggested that Arkham City wasn't about rehabilitation or even containment, but mass extermination. By throwing Gotham's most dangerous criminals into one enclosed war zone, Sharp may have been deliberately inciting violence, letting them tear each other apart until only a handful survived. We can actually hear 2 radio interviews conducted by Vicky Vale with Sharp before the grand opening of Arkham City, which give us an insight into his public persona, and give us hints that maybe other characters in this world aren't what they seem. I'm looking at you, Jack Ryder.
This is Vicky Vale, coming to you live from the mayor's office in downtown Gotham. Today is your first chance to put questions directly to the mayor. As you know, Mayor Sharp's criminal quarantine program was the main platform that won him the election. Now that the facility is fully operational, does Gotham still feel the same way about it? Are the rumors of prison brutalization true? Are you happy with your tax dollars funding a program like this? More on tonight's show. Welcome, Gotham, to the Vicky Vale Show, and welcome to Gotham's new mayor, Quincy Sharp.
Good evening, Miss Vale.
So, Mr. Mayor, the question I put to you, Arkham City, success or potential powder keg?
What a question, Vicky. You don't mind if I call you Vicky, do you?
Of course not, Quincy.
Well, Vicky, I can only describe the last 6 months as having been a great success. The people spoke. They said they were sick of crime in Gotham. They said they didn't want to place their safety, their children's safety, in the hands of vigilantes like Batman, Nightwing, and there's at least one more.
The Huntress, the Creeper?
Whoever. Listen, Vicky. The people wanted a sane solution, and I've provided one. My administration has taken steps to guarantee the personal safety of each and every member of Gotham, from the rich to the poor. by separating the disgusting criminal element that eats away at our fine city like a cancer from the good people who want only to live their lives in peace. I have struck a blow that will change this great city forever.
And what do you say to those who campaign against the plan? To those who call it inhumane? I believe the campaign against the zone has its fair share of celebrity members. Take Bruce Wayne, for example.
Mr. Wayne will soon come over to our side. I have great faith. In fact, I have a meeting scheduled with his people for tomorrow. We must never forget that it was filthy degenerates like the prisoners of Arkham City who were responsible for murdering Mr. Wayne's family.
Even so, Bruce Wayne doesn't seem to be a huge fan of your plans.
Time will tell, Vicky. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That was what Quincy Sharp, mayor of Gotham City, had to say last week. I wonder how he feels now that Bruce Wayne has been sent into Arkham City.
By the time Arkham City was fully operational, Quincy Sharp was a hollowed-out shell of the man he pretended to be. Years of untreated schizophrenia combined with Hugo Strange's constant drugging had left his mind fragile to the point of collapse. He couldn't even handle the simplest tasks without Strange whispering instructions into his ear. Go to bed, hang up the phone, sign this paper. His so-called leadership had been reduced to dependence on morale-boosting speeches from the very man pulling his strings. Eventually, Sharp decided to try and break free. He attempted to dig into Strange's financial records, desperate to uncover who was bankrolling Arkham City, but Strange caught him in the act, and just like that, the mayor became expendable. Sharp was kidnapped, stripped of his title, and dumped into the very prison he had helped create. Strange announced his downfall, blasting orders through the loudspeakers for the inmates to welcome their newest resident. Now, I can't help but notice here the similarities to Amadeus Arkham in that both men were thrown into their own prisons as inmates. Bit of a strenuous link, I know, but I think considering Sharp's connections back to Amadeus in the Asylum, this is quite a cool parallel. Batman found Sharp almost immediately, and Sharp was being brutalised by Two-Face's thugs at the city's entrance when the Dark Knight intervened. But instead of offering comfort, Batman dragged Sharp to a rooftop, dangled him over the edge and demanded answers, like he does. In his broken state, Sharp confessed everything. Strange had manipulated him since the Arkham Asylum days, promising funding for a mayoral run in exchange for creating Arkham City and appointing Strange to oversee it. Sharp admitted his twisted dream, which was to rid Gotham of its criminal element, declaring this was to be my legacy. Batman reminded him that every death inside these walls were his fault, then left him on the roof to think about what he'd done in front of one of his own old campaign posters. Sharp would survive the night, but not with much dignity. When Protocol 10 reduced Arkham City to a war zone, he fled and staggered to the Church Medical Centre, where Vicky Vale and the rest of the survivors had gathered. She tried to interview him, hoping for a final revelation from the public architect of Arkham City, but instead Sharp looked tired and broken and simply begged her to leave him alone.
We meet again, Mr. Mayor.
Miss Vale, I really don't have anything to say.
Really? How about the fact that it was you that hired Hugo Strange?
It wasn't my fault.
Oh? Then whose was it? Gotham wants to know. Gotham needs to know.
I have no comment. Now please leave me alone.
For once here, though, we actually kind of see him drop the facade. He admitted his role in the catastrophe and apologised, ashamed of the chaos that he'd unleashed upon Gotham, which is nice of him, I guess. In the aftermath of Arkham City, Quincy Sharp's fall from grace was absolute. Stripped of power, discharged from office, and put on trial, his crimes finally caught up to him. Vicky Vale confronted him with evidence that he'd been supplying weapons to the very gangs running wild inside Arkham City. Sharp tried to deny it, clinging on to whatever scraps of dignity he thought he had left, but Vale produced the requisition form stamped with his own signature. Cornered, he realised there was no way out. His career was over, his reputation was ruined, and his so-called legacy was shattered. His final act was one of desperation and loneliness. Alone in his cell, Sharp hanged himself with his bedsheets from the light fixture, and what makes this even more depressing is the fact it wasn't just guilt that drove him there. Remnants of Hugo Strange's manipulations lingered even after Strange's death. The psychological conditioning Strange had inflicted on him gnawed away at his fragile mind until suicide felt like the only option. Sharp's story didn't end with triumph or even redemption. He would be remembered as the man who allowed himself to be nothing more than a pawn in a conspiracy that murdered thousands, all in service of his hunger for power. And by the time of Arkham Knight, Sharp was little more than a cautionary tale. One of his old campaign posters could be found plastered on Miagani Island tied to a riddle, which unlocks the Gotham City story entitled Visiting Hours, which, to bring us to the end of Sharp's story, I'll read now. Prison. The irony wasn't lost on Quincy Sharp, but that didn't mean he appreciated it. Quincy cried on the hard, cramped bed in his small, sterile cell, longing for the splendour of his city hall. He wished his master was there. Dr. Hugo Strange had awoken Quincy and lifted him to a higher state of awareness, made him mayor of Gotham. The therapy, the drugs, the loss of free will, a fair price for such a gift. In return, Quincy had defended Strange through both trials. Even now he clutched on to Strange's remaining secrets, dear mementos of a parted friend. "It's okay, Quincy," he heard Strange say. "I'm here." "Hugo?" Quincy asked, wiping his tears on the cheap Arkham City jumpsuit the guards made him wear. There he was, Dr. Hugo Strange, with his radiant white lab coat and paternal smile. "Quincy, my servant, my friend," Hugo said. "We don't have much time." Quincy was crying again, but this time with joy. "How, Master? How did you—" "Psychology, Quincy. Science. I'm a being of suggestion, etched into your subconsciousness by my living self." The therapy, Quincy realised, the hypnosis, the drugs. "Stay with me, Master, please." Quincy tried to grab hold of Phantom hand. "I cannot," Strange said, looking benevolently down at Quincy, stroking his hair with a touch the prisoner couldn't feel. "But there is one last service you can perform for me. Anything, Hugo, please. First, remove the sheet from your bed, Quincy, and tie it to the light fixture on the ceiling." And with that brings the end of Warden Quincy Sharp. Sharp is one of the most underutilised characters in the Arkham series, because I genuinely think his story is one of the most interesting in the series. It shows us that he wasn't a bad man, just a vulnerable one forced to do the bidding of some of the most evil people in the Batman mythos. So I hope you learned something about the man behind most of the events we see in the series' early days. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.